Hey y'all, welcome back. Super excited to be tuning in today to talk all about the subject that sometimes you might be feeling like you're talking to an empty room on social media. Hey, we've all been there, and it can get so frustrating hearing these great influencers say things like, hey, let's get more engagement on social media and you'll be able to bust through the algorithm and get more reach. Hey, engagement is what it's all about. And you try, but all you hear is crickets. So today we're going to go in some actionable items that you can do to increase your engagement and not get so frustrated and give up when it comes to your social media reach. If you want to dive deeper, there is a freebie in this live stream on the description there. So go ahead and grab it. You can download it. It's directly from Google Drive there. But when it comes to engagement, I want to start out with thinking there is really no easy way out. A lot of people want that magic pill of the perfect content that's going to work well. So these strategies, of course, need to be adapted to your own audience. And that's going to be strategy number one, is you need to know your audience better than anyone else. It's understanding that really famous business quote that says, the person who understands the customer wins. Same is true on any social media, whether you're product-based, service-based, whether you're a coach or a course creator. You need to really understand who your customer is and what motivates them. Sometimes I like to think about this as the enthusiasm factor. You need to remember that someone's enthusiasm, what they get excited about, that's actually the gateway of what influences them. So ask yourself, what do my followers get excited about? That content is going to produce way more engagement than anything else. Now, you might be thinking, Megan, what are you talking about? How am I supposed to know what my customers are enthusiastic about? Well, this comes down to creating what we call the ideal customer avatar, coming up with a name, an age, and some characteristics that the person you're trying to solve the problem for by creating your product or service has. That's known as a lot of different things in the marketing world. For this live stream, we'll go ahead and call it the ideal customer avatar. So if you haven't done that first step yet, that's going to be your step number one, is get to know that customer, that one person who you're speaking to. Then every piece of content you create, you're going to write for that one person. If you're doing your job right, it's going to go ahead and exclude the people who your product is not right for, which is a good thing because you don't want to sell your product to people who aren't going to be able to use it. You want to sell your product to that one person. They'll feel like every single status update was understood by something that was what we call identity marketing, something that spoke to their identity because you've done that research. If you're struggling with this, truly do the work of actually getting on a discovery call with some of your followers already, some of your power users, some of the people who already engage with you, and ask them about their personality. Ask them what motivates them, what outcomes they want in life, and get to that excitement and enthusiasm factor. Because if you can produce content on social media that speaks to what people are excited about, that's what they're going to engage with when you get your emotional aspects involved. Remember, as humans, we want to think we buy on logic. We want to think that we are the most logical creatures, but that is certainly not true. Most of marketing and most of sales should be speaking to those emotions, which makes it more fun to produce that content, in my opinion, anyway. So before we go into any of the other action items you need to take, I really want to look at what influences someone a little deeper here. And these are coming from Robert. I don't know how to pronounce his last name, but I'm going to go with Cialdini. He actually wrote a book called Influence. So go ahead and Google it if you haven't yet. And he says that in order to persuade someone, you need to have a few different things present. And what these are reciprocity. So we've talked about this before, the law of reciprocity being if you give someone something, they automatically think that they want to give you something back. That's the beauty of having a value marketing approach. So giving away your freebies, giving away your best secrets, getting people outcomes of your tips, and really giving people results without them having to pay for anything at first. That's kind of the law of reciprocity. They then feel tied to you that they owe you something in return. And when it comes time to sell to them, they'll feel really excited about paying you for your product. Next is consistency. Consistency, obviously, you need to make sure that you're reaching people at the right time with the right message. So remember, not everyone in your funnel is in the same place on that customer path. So the ability to repeat your content and have your message hit someone at different stages in their life is a powerful marketing tool. So if you're a little bit afraid to do this, please don't be, because you never know when that content is going to hit someone where their pain point is strong enough. It's going to compel them to truly purchase this time. Lastly, if you need a little more tips here, remember it takes 7 to 14 touch points with a brand in order to get that buying, that sort of loyalty and that sort of action towards buying from you. So again, that's why consistency works really well to keep you top of mind so you're always the logical choice to purchase from. Social proof is the next one that he mentioned. Social proof is amazing for selling when it comes down to testimonials. And the easiest way to understand this one, I think, is it's word of mouth marketing. It's having a peer actually tell you their outcome and experience rather than hearing it directly from the company. Oh man, does that build trust way better. And the last one that he says is authority. So authority is going to be something that you can go ahead and establish with that know, like, and trust we talk about all the time. Know, like, and trust and authority, I think, kind of go hand in hand. So if someone sees you as an expert and if someone sees you as an authority in your field, they're going to trust you. And we all know trust leads to sales. So how do you get that authority status? You continue to talk about the same thing, the same content, and you go deep on that subject matter. We think we have to please our followers by giving them a lot of variety. And we talk about variety in the aspect of categories here at MeetEdgar. But that variety can sometimes lead people to go too wide in their subject matter. And when you go too wide in your subject matter, you're not positioning yourself as an authority on one thing. I know you've heard it before, but niching down and making sure that you are speaking to one person and positioning yourself as the go-to expert is truly going to be one of the best things you can do to influence people to trust and purchase from you. So those are going to be some of the things that I want you to kind of think about. And the next thing that we're going to dive into to get your engagement rate up and to continue to push through when you hear those crickets on social media is really making sure that you're spending time in different groups. So we've talked about how valuable it is to go into existing Facebook groups and talk with people in there, answer their questions, actually give them the resources that you've created from your own brand to be seen as someone really helpful in those groups. It not only helps guide your content strategy because you're hearing the language that people are using in those groups, but it's also giving your brand awareness. You can comment in groups as your page, like as your company page. And that means every time you're commenting and adding value to someone, it's building a one-on-one direct relationship where they're seeing your brand name being the one that's helping them. Again, that emotional appeal goes into it quite a bit more because they're going to get that law of reciprocity and be really excited to see that they've been helped by you. And I know so many people have probably heard this tip before, but truly ask yourself if you have taken action on going into these groups. It's not just a one-time thing either. I'd love to suggest that you do this multiple times a week to always have a top of mind on what's going on the language people are using to ask questions about your industry. And I would really love to also see that this consistency side of engagement, when you're asking yourself, hey, why am I not being consistent online? That it's not just a thing of willpower. I think so often we think, oh, I'm giving up because I'm not strong enough to continue and I'm not going to be consistent because of something that has to do with me. Because often that's truly not the case. What I think has to do with people not being consistent, whether it's producing blog content each week or whether it's engaging on social media, is it's the systems that you have set up that aren't leading to the actual consistency that that your followers deserve from you. So 2 systems that can help with consistency are going to be upcycling your content and producing evergreen content. So upcycling your content is all about making sure you have one really well-researched piece of content, like a blog post or a podcast or a video, and you're always producing 5 to 10 social media status updates from this, whether it's a text-only status update or a blog turned into a 2-minute video. You can look on our blog, actually, the MeetEdgar blog, and you can see every single live stream that I do with you guys here is actually transcribed through a transcription service and then posted as a blog post. So you can see how our content strategy is going to actually be involved in making sure that we're not stuck on the content creation treadmill. Same deal when it comes to our newsletter. A lot of the content we're writing in our newsletter, we're going to get snippets and actually make the status updates as text-only status updates. What does this do? It allows us to know, people who don't actually open our email or might not actually be on our newsletter list yet, you're going to still be able to see all that valuable information that we created. And it just makes sure that you're creating the value for people in a way it's going to get the most eyes on it. And again, you're not having to feel like you have to produce 20 pieces of content every week. You can produce one piece of content every week and upcycle that into multiple different mediums and multiple different forms. So ask yourself when it comes to consistency if you have this upcycling strategy in place. And if not, make yourself a checklist for every single pillar of content you're producing, whether it's a blog, a video, a podcast. How can you make sure you have this systemized so that you get 5 status updates at least from each of them? And I know you're go-getters out there, so I'm going to challenge you to at least get 10, because I think you're going to see this really relieve a lot of stress in making sure you don't have to continuously get that content out. All right, so the other thing is an evergreen content strategy. If you tune into these often, I know you know what that is, but real quick for those who are just hearing this term, evergreen just means writing content in a way that it's not tied to a specific date or a specific time, and that you can actually reshare a blog post in like a year from now. This is really important because you're always gaining new followers, and you always want to make sure that content is getting out to your new followers and providing them value. Cool? Cool. All right, so the next thing for consistency that I think kind of goes into the more touchy-feely side of marketing is you need to be a little willing to be imperfect. Because if you're not willing to be imperfect, you're most likely not going to put enough content out there to be consistent on social media. So the mindset that I like to take with this is that you need to be the person who has the courage to be imperfect, you know? That's what stops so many people. And you know the businesses that are succeeding online and that are gaining hundreds and thousands of followers are those who are just brave enough to continue to put content out there and test. So have that mindset that you are courageous enough to be imperfect and start to test the content you're getting out there. I promise you, showing up every single day is way better imperfectly than showing up once a month with a perfect piece of content. All right, so next, you want to make sure that you're aligning with the type of content your followers want. And what I mean by this is we know that in the customer funnel, so when you're actually bringing people from the brand awareness phase down to the decision-making and the consideration phase and the decision-making phase, you need to speak to people in your funnel a little bit differently, right? On social media, obviously, you can't target people in that way, but you need to be producing content for each and every person. Now, when it comes to actually producing content that's on their level, you really want to make sure that you're noticing if you're producing content that's above people's heads or if you're producing content that's below people's heads, in the fact that, are you positioning your content in a way that's a little more complicated or a little more advanced than the people know about your industry, right? So if I'm going to do something about like the Facebook algorithm and I get out my chalkboard and I write like a huge trigonometry thing to explain the algorithm, probably a little above your head, and that's not going to be content you're going to want to engage with. Same with the other direction. If I just start to explain how to create a Facebook profile, that's a little below you. You know how to do that because you're watching a live stream here, so you're not going to engage with that content. So make sure you understand the expertise level of your followers and that you're really speaking to them so they don't feel like they're being spoken down to or they don't feel like the content is above their head. Again, if you're not sure, remember to ask, DM people. Remember that there's always someone on the other side of that screen who most likely wants to help. If they're in your community, they want to help build a community of content that they love to consume. So don't be afraid to give people a couple of DMs, build those one-on-one relationships at the beginning so you can start to understand what level of content you should be creating there. You also really want to make sure that you're choosing the types of content that are fun for you to create. So if you do not love creating video, don't feel like you have to. I will definitely push you to create video if you don't want to be on camera, doing things like, doing a screen share of you talking. This sort of ability to get your tone out there, stuff like that is really important. But in order to stay consistent and in order to continue to produce all of this content, remind yourself at the beginning, do content that's fun for you to create because people will truly feel that energy. You can always focus on content that's really solution-oriented to help with engagement as well. The reason that this is so important is because once you give people a problem that they're facing, once you kind of position them of the fact that, hey, this is where you are now, this is your pain point, but these are the solutions that I can give to you, people start to get really excited about those solutions and about seeing themselves in those solutions. So if you're able to produce content that is actually solution-oriented, people will probably talk back to you quite a bit more. All right. So, lastly, here, another kind of obvious thing for engagement is asking questions. So often I hear from people, hey, I'm not getting any engagement. No one is listening to me on social media. But when we look at their content strategy, there's no questions or calls to action within their status updates. So, these don't have to be rocket science questions. So much of the time, people are afraid to ask questions because they don't know what to ask. Ask people about their favorite book. Do a fill in the blank question. Ask people to share a GIF that describes their day. People love sharing their GIF game, right? It's so fun to show off how great you are with GIFs, stuff like that. So really focus on adding questions into your social media strategy. I personally love to Google like icebreaker questions because those can produce really fun ones that people do actually want to engage with. And really, ask yourself here, if this were easy, what would it look like? It would look like just simply having a conversation with real people to gain that trust and to really make sure that you're marketing yourself and your personality and building a true friendship with your followers. They don't call it friending someone on social media for nothing. So think of your followers in this way. That's how social media is supposed to be set up. And it gets a lot easier to stay consistent and to continue to want to engage with your followers. And last but not least, I'm going to do a little shameless plug here in the fact that social media becomes a lot more easy to be consistent with when you use an automated tool like MeetEdgar. So if you're feeling a little overwhelmed after watching this video and you're like, oh my gosh, I want to be more consistent, I want to add questions in, but I just don't have time. If you use an automation tool, Edgar can actually send that different content type out all of the time for you. So you don't have to spend that time actually babysitting and logging into your feeds. And then the time you're spending on social media can be that when you're engaging with your followers, or you're really nailing down your followers' personalities and what makes them enthusiastic so that you can start influencing them, so that you can solve their pain points, and so that you can actually be able to sell a product or service that can change their lives for the better. Awesome. Thank you guys so much for tuning in. So fun hanging out with you always. I'm going to check the comments after this live stream, make sure we don't have any other questions, and email if I missed anything, support@meetedgar.com. As I mentioned, there is a freebie guide in the description to this video that you can go ahead and click on to get a little bit more deeper dive into the engagement world of social media. Awesome hanging out today, guys, and hopefully you have a great day.